Hey guys, I'm the MMA Breakdown, and we are doing predictions for UFC 210, Cormier versus Johnson 2. Follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description at MMA Breakdown 0. First fight on the UFC Fight Pass prelim card at flyweight, Lausa versus Magomed Bibulatov. I view this as a striker versus wrestler matchup. Lausa had some really nice moments on the feet against Yao Zakai in his debut where he hurt him. He's definitely a patient striker, but once he did hurt, Zakai was all over him trying to chase the finish, but also had some moments on the ground where he didn't look so good. Got put on his back or ended up on his back somehow against Zakai and was controlled there for a bit, and that's not a good look. Zakai is a pretty low-level fighter by UFC standards, and if he was struggling on the ground even a little bit against Zakai, I think a Russian wrestler like Bibulatov is going to give him a lot more problems on the ground. So I'm going to take Bibulatov, and I did watch a couple of Bibulatov's fights. This is his UFC debut, and honestly, I was not that impressed. I don't think his wrestling it didn't look that dominant or all that effective. I don't think this is a future Nurmagomedov or even an Islam Makhachev, a guy like that. But he just seemed to be a very aggressive, committed wrestler, and I think that'll be enough to get by Lausa, who seems a little too patient on the feet to really overwhelm guys early, which is what I think he would need to do here against Bibulatov. So not going off of a whole lot, not very familiar with these guys, but I'm going to go with Bibulatov by decision. All right, at women's bantamweight, Caitlin Chookagian versus Irene Aldana. I was not impressed with Aldana's loss to Leslie Smith in her debut. Alexa Grasso, who comes out of the same camp in Mexico, I think Team Lobo or something like that. I don't know. They seem to both have very boxing centric styles, kind of low output, and seem to struggle adapting to the more MMA oriented style of striking. She could not deal with the pressure or the volume of Smith at all. Was dropped in that first round. Did have a moment at the end of the second round where she came on strong and started to find her range and lit Smith up, but really seems to be committed to a boxing approach, and someone like Smith, who's not a technical striker, but who's a willing brawler and able to come forward, really just threw her off her game. Chookagian, though, I don't think she has that kind of pressure, that kind of confidence in her hands, or the volume that Smith has. And she also has not really looked impressive at all. She got a really squeaky win against Lauren Murphy in her debut, and I scored that fight for Murphy. Thought she easily could have lost the decision, but she was not impressive. Really didn't really produce a lot of meaningful offense. Got put on her back a little bit, and then against Liz Carmouche was pretty handily out-wrestled and couldn't do much off of her back. So I don't think Chookagian has the skill or even the volume in her hands to do to Aldana what Smith did. So I am going to take Aldana, just being the more technical, skilled striker. But I don't know, it's a weird fight between two very green fighters who have not impressed in the UFC so far. So I'm going to take Aldana, but it's not a pick that I'm very confident in at all. All right, at lightweight, Josh Emmett versus Desmond Green, who's making his debut. I'm going to take Josh Emmett here. He had a pretty strong performance in his last fight against Scott Holtzman had a decent win over John Tuck in his debut. Desmond Green watched a couple of his recent fights and seems to be too patient of a striker. I think likes to hang around on the outside, and is pretty low volume. Doesn't throw a whole lot of strikes, and occasionally looks for takedowns. His I think it was his fight against Martin Brown, though, in his last fight, where a lot of his takedowns got stuffed, and Martin Brown, as he stuffed some takedowns and sprawled on him, was landing some pretty vicious elbows to the temple, and that he found himself in that position quite a bit throughout that fight. So I did not like that. I thought that was a bit of a red flag in Green's game. And I think Emmett is going to out-wrestle him and just be more aggressive on the feet. He was pretty aggressive against Holtzman, was able to walk him back into the fence, and from there had some pretty good clinch striking, can hit the takedown. But Emmet has not been tearing through guys. I mean, didn't finish Holtzman, and against Tuck, it was a short notice fight, but I don't think looked that great. And there is a big experience difference here. Emmet, I think, has 11 fights, and Green has, I think, over 20. So that worries me a bit, but yeah, Green, I haven't seen enough dominance in his game, and Emmett just looks like the more aggressive, active fighter, so I'm going to go with Emmett by decision. All right, at lightweight, Gregor Gillespie versus Andrew Holbrook. I like this fight. This is a pure wrestler in Gillespie versus a pretty subtle, crafty grappler in Holbrook. And originally, I was feeling Holbrook here. Gillespie is pretty undersized for the division. Was really small against Glyco Franca. Was still able to out-wrestle him, though. And I don't think Holbrook will have quite the same size advantage as Franca had, but I do think it's worth noting that Gillespie is undersized for the division. But I think Gillespie is going to out-wrestle him here. I think his meat and potatoes, bread and butter wrestling game is going to going to outdo the kind of more crafty grappling game of Holbrook. He looks for a lot of submissions, but does kind of give up position, even against Jake Matthews in his last fight, where he did have the better moments on the ground. You know, took Matthews back at one point and was looking for leg locks. He was stuck on bottom a lot. I think he's too willing to play that submission over position game, and Gillespie just looks like a very gritty, hard-nosed wrestler. Took a lot of damage against Franca trying to get the takedown, and ate a lot of elbows. But at the end of that Matthews fight, Holbrook was on his back, was bloodied up a bit, and a guy who just looks as gritty and determined as Gillespie, and who looks like a very relentless wrestler. I think he's going to be able to get Holbrook down, and even though Holbrook threatens with submissions and tries to scramble a lot, never really came close with a submission against Matthews, and also against Ramsey Nijam, who's not a very dominant positional wrestler. Holbrook wasn't really able to get an advantage on him on the ground. So I like Gillespie's pure wrestling here. I think he's going to out-wrestle Holbrook for a decision win. All right, a light heavyweight, and this is starting the FS1 prelim card, Patrick Cummins versus Jan Blachowicz. I have to take Cummins here, and I know it's, I think either pick here would be a risky pick, especially after Cummins' loss to Nogueira. I think a lot of people are really going to be reluctant to pick Cummins. That was a very bad loss, pretty embarrassing actually. But I just can't take Blachowicz over a wrestler. Think back to the Corey Anderson fight where Blachowicz just got laid and prayed, could not work off of his back, was out clinched at will by Jimmy Manua, and also Gustafsson, the one fight where Blachowicz was actually striking effectively and had a clear advantage over his opponent. Gustafsson was able to save himself by just going back to the takedown over and over again. And also, this guy got into a really dangerous brawl where he really put himself in a position to lose and get knocked out against Igor Pokrayets. I thought that was terrible. Pokrayets was a guy who I think had been cut from the UFC and is just a totally irrelevant fighter, and he really struggled with him. So Cummins has been in there with the better guys, Teixeira and Cormier, even though he gets destroyed by those elite fighters. In the Teixeira fight, he still made it. He gave a decent showing. Was able to work his jab a bit, land some uppercuts from the clinch, and hit some takedowns on Teixeira. Not that they led to anything, but I have to go with the wrestler for one thing, and then Blachowicz has just not put it together, has not looked like a really solid fighter in the UFC, is always inconsistent, and aside from that Latifi fight, and aside from having some moments on the feet against Gustafsson, has just not looked like a UFC level fighter. So I have to go with Cummins, who does have that dominant skill with his wrestling. So Cummins by decision. But if it stays on the feet, even though I just mentioned how Cummins has shown some striking skill against some better guys in the division, I would not trust him to be able to strike with Blachowicz over 3 rounds. So if he couldn't get him down, then I think Blachowicz has the advantage, but I'm going to take Cummins by decision. At featherweight, Charles Rosa versus Shane Burgos. I thought Burgos looked really good against Thiago Trator in his debut. Showed really good takedown defense, was really aggressive, had great forward pressure, and was really willing to mix it up in the pocket with Trator. Clipped him, dropped him at one point. I thought Burgos looked really good, had a lot of confidence in his hands, and really durable. Ate a lot of shots, but did that in order to close distance and land his shots, and it worked out for him. So really like that performance by Burgos. And Charles Rosa, I just think the guy's overrated. Came in his debut on short notice against Seaver and did fairly well against Seaver, but if you watch his fight against Kyle Bochniak, which I believe was his most recent fight, was not that good. Bochniak was able to stuff a lot of his takedown attempts and even put Rosa on his back. Looked like he kind of dropped him or caught a leg and knocked him down as Rosa was coming in and got some ground and pound off. And then on the feet, Rosa tries to play this range kickboxing game. He has some decent leg kicks, which he used well against Bochniak, but Bochniak, every time he chose to explode in and close the distance, was landing really well on Rosa. So I was not impressed with Rosa. I would worry about the wrestling here for Burgos. His takedown defense did look good against Trator, but I would assume Rosa is a better wrestler. But I think Burgos will have that takedown defense, and on the feet, I think he's just going to overwhelm Rosa, close the distance like Bochniak did, and really look for the knockout in the pocket and probably overwhelm Rosa. So I'm going to take Burgos by maybe a third round TKO. All right, at welterweight, Kamaru Usman versus Sean Strickland. I'm going to take Usman here. Great boxer, wrestler, a lot of forward movement and pressure on the feet, and that's going to be his biggest asset here against Strickland, I think, who really didn't deal well with the pressure and the volume of Santiago Ponzinibbio. Strickland is a technical fighter, a pretty intelligent fighter, but kind of low volume and I think patient to a fault. I think he's going to give Usman too much time to get in his groove, and Usman's going to dictate the offense. He's going to be walking Strickland down and outstriking him. And Usman's a really strong wrestler, great athlete. He's really been putting it together lately. He's gotten some wins over some good prospects in Leon Edwards and Morley Alves. I think he's going to do the same to Strickland here. Usman is hittable, though, a little bit early in fights against Leon Edwards. Took him a little time to get his rhythm going. But Sean Strickland, I don't think is a big power puncher. Did have that finish over Alex Garcia. But other than that, it's more of a technical fighter who will outpoint you from range. And I think Usman's pressure boxing style, wrestle box style is going to trump Strickland's more cerebral technical game. So Usman by decision. All right, at featherweight, the return of Miles Jury, who's facing Mike De La Torre. And this is going to be one of my most confident picks on the card, even though Miles Jury is coming back from a long layoff. I think December 2015 was the last time he fought. So like almost a year and a half. But I don't see any way De La Torre can win this one. Miles Jury is just better everywhere. A more technical striker, can capitalize on openings on the feet and knock people out. Like he did to Ramsey Nijum and Takanori Gomi. And Jury has a really different grappling style. And we saw that against Michael Johnson. De La Torre is kind of weak against grapplers. Brian Ortega submitted him pretty easily out of the gate in the first round. Was there another fight where De La Torre got submitted? His last fight against Godofredo Pepe in the first round. And also fought to a split decision against Yui Chul Nam, who's, not a very good fighter. So taking Miles Jury here, I think he's either going to knock out De La Torre or submit him. But I think he's just too intelligent and too skilled of a fighter on the feet and on the ground. And De La Torre is a guy who has some power. He's aggressive on the feet, but just not skilled enough of a striker, and doesn't really put his game together well enough to really do well against better guys. So I think Jury is pretty much going to have a cakewalk here. So I'm going to say Jury by submission, first or second round. All right, onto the main card at lightweight, Will Brooks versus Charles Oliveira. And this is the most interesting fight on the card to me. Charles Oliveira is moving back up to lightweight for the first time since 2011. And Will Brooks is this guy who, when he came over from Bellator last summer, everyone was talking about this guy as being a future champ in the UFC, and his performances have totally put that notion to bed. Really struggled against Ross Pearson in his debut. And then even though he had the broken rib and did take Oliveira's back standing, looked pretty terrible in the way he went down to Oliveira, Cowboy Oliveira. So the size discrepancy, I think that's a factor here. Will Brooks being a natural lightweight and Oliveira, I think, being a natural featherweight. Will Brooks could have a size and strength advantage. But, Oliveira is just, he's a wicked submission artist. He did get submitted in his last fight by Lamas, but Will Brooks, we don't see much submission offense from him. He couldn't even really out-wrestle a guy like Pearson, who really should have been tailor-made for a guy like Brooks to implement his wrestling game against very easily. And he struggled with Ross Pearson. And really let Alex Cowboy really impose his size against him. And a guy like Oliveira, who does have, I think, mental fortitude issues and durability issues, is still a guy, though, who can close the distance to get guys to the ground, even against very dangerous strikers like Jeremy Stevens. And also against solid grapplers like Lamas. He was out wrestling Lamas early in that fight. Got him to the ground, was on top of him. And also against Anthony Pettis, took his back twice in that first round before getting submitted. And I think that he can do that against Brooks, who had a lot of trouble maintaining separation against Pearson, and who's just not looked very good in the UFC. So I'm going to take Oliveira. I'm going to take him to win by submission. But both of these guys have looked really shaky. Mentally, don't seem to be in great places lately. So I don't know. It's not a confident pick, but I will take Oliveira by submission. All right, at welterweight, Thiago Alves versus Patrick Cote. I'm going to take Cote in this fight. Alves, I think, is just over the hill. If he was going to have a performance where he looked rejuvenated, I think he would have. We would have saw that against Jim Miller in his last fight, who was also a fighter who's aging and getting slower, losing a step athletically. But Alves was technically outstruck by Jim Miller and couldn't stop Miller's takedown, who was not a great wrestler. Cote, being the former middleweight, having the size advantage, and being a pretty good takedown artist, and who has looked like an improved wrestler in the last several years, even though he's getting a lot older. I think he'll be able to out-wrestle Alves. His wrestling's looked really good against Joe Riggs, and knocked out Ben Saunders with ground and pound. On the feet, though, Cote's striking is still pretty clunky. Got destroyed by Cerrone. That fight with Berkman, where they were just bar brawling, was not pretty. Alves should have a big technical advantage and a speed advantage on the feet. But Alves just has looked flat and uninspired. Has not been fighting actively, so I'm going to take Cote to get it done with his wrestling. All right, at women's strawweight, Cynthia Calvillo versus Pearl Gonzalez. Calvillo coming off of that great win against Amanda Cooper. Really looks like a fantastic specialized grappler, just a snake on the ground. Pearl Gonzalez, I watched a couple of her fights, and she actually has a win in 2013 over Courtney Casey, where she actually looks like she has a solid, decently well-rounded game. Hit some throws on Casey, controlled her on the ground, was able to maintain top position, win scrambles, and then the opponent she fought, what was her name? I don't remember, but it was her most recent fight. Her opponent just looked like a really low-level opponent, and Gonzalez just kind of methodically outstruck her from range and was able to get in mount, eventually pound her out. Or it was her second most recent fight against Mejia. And then hit an armbar against her last opponent, Casimir. So she does seem to have some ability on the ground. But she only fought, her last fight was, I think, a year ago, and then before then hadn't fought since 2015. Calvillo has fought twice this year already, and just seems very aggressive and is able to really impose her grappling game on opponents. So I'm going to take Calvillo. From what I've seen, which is not much of either fighter, I think Gonzalez has the more complete game, maybe more of a technical striker. But Calvillo is real scrappy, and I think her grappling game is going to take her pretty far, at least against other inexperienced female fighters, because we don't see very many specialized grapplers in the women's division. So I'm going to take Calvillo by submission, I guess, but I'm not entirely sure. All right, at middleweight, Chris Weidman versus Gegard Mousasi. Man, everyone's down on Weidman. I know Mousasi is going to be the hot pick here, but well, for one thing, I don't trust Mousasi to get it done against a high-level wrestler. I cannot get those King Mo and Keith Jardine fights out of my mind, and I did not rewatch them for this, so hopefully I'm not talking out of my ass here, but that King Mo fight, I remember Mousasi just getting badly out-wrestled, and that Keith Jardine fight where he was just destroying Jardine on the feet, and should have just wiped the floor with him, but Jardine was able to hit these takedowns that should not have gotten him the draw, but it took Mousasi out of the fight enough for the judges to score that a draw. And against a high-level wrestler like Weidman, who still managed to get a bit of control time against Romero on the ground, I think that Mousasi is not going to be able to stop the takedown enough against Weidman. And he has not fought a really high-level wrestler. I mean, maybe Jacare, but that was several years ago. But other than that, has not had to fight a really strong wrestler at the level of Weidman. So it's a really different matchup for Mousasi. And even on the feet, Weidman is still a good pressure boxer. Mousasi's not really a knockout artist, although he's been a lot more aggressive lately in fights. But his wins against Hall and against Vitor Belfort over the hill, and who's the other guy he beat recently? Thiago Santos. This is a huge step up in competition for Mousasi. So I'm going to take Weidman by decision. I think he hits enough takedowns, can control Mousasi enough on the ground, and especially this being a 3-round fight, I think really favors Weidman. But Weidman, I will admit, I thought his confidence looked shaken against Romero, and a little bit. And we also know that Weidman can fade fairly hard in fights, like the Machida fight. And the Luke Rockhold fight where he just emptied the tank early and faded hard in that, was it the second round, I think. And that's where I think Mousasi will win this fight if he does, is in the second or third rounds. If Weidman's confidence starts to go, He can't hit those takedowns, and he's forced to strike with Mousasi. Then Mousasi, and he's tired. I think Mousasi's volume, his aggression will overwhelm Weidman. He can get a TKO there. I'm going to take Weidman. I think he should be motivated to get a win. I think he's being the former champion and losing to two really elite guys, Rockhold and Romero. Those losses aren't so bad, and even that Romero fight, I thought he was winning every round. I think he's going to be able to out-wrestle Mousasi, but there's that question of where Weidman's head is at, and is he too far gone after two brutal losses that he can't out-wrestle a guy like Mousasi who has struggled with wrestlers in the past. So very interesting matchup. Mousasi could very well win, but I'm taking Weidman for a decision. All right, and then the main event, Daniel Cormier versus Anthony Johnson. I don't really have a whole lot to say here. I think the matchup is exactly the same as the first time it happened. If Cormier is able to get Johnson to the ground, he can submit him just as easily as he did the first time. But I just think Cormier has taken so much damage. Only really one fight since the first Johnson fight, but even in the Johnson fight, got tagged, dropped in that first round. But then that Gustafsson fight was just such a war, where he again got dropped and nearly had his lights put out at one point. But just took so much damage over the full 5 rounds. And he even said after that fight that fight took years off of his life. And it really showed. And against a guy like Gustafsson, who Johnson had ran over and who didn't look great against Blachowicz, Cormier really that took a lot out of him, I think. That combined with what he went through in the first Johnson fight, and then didn't take any damage against Anderson, but didn't look all that impressive, I thought. So I think Johnson, being the younger guy here, the fresher guy, who has the momentum, and who just has that brutal, scary power, I think that he can get it done this time against Cormier, but it's predicated on him being intelligent, not going crazy and wild like he did against Cormier the first time, where he fought like he just had no chance to win other than getting him out of there in the first round. And he just really expended himself and left himself wide open for the takedown, especially if he didn't get that finish. So he's got to fight a lot smarter, a lot more composed, like he did against Phil Davis, which we haven't really seen a performance like that from Johnson since that fight, where he actually went to a decision against Phil Davis. That's a crazy thing to think. And Davis didn't even try to, he wasn't even threatening the takedown against him. Johnson just kind of let Davis come to him and countered him really effectively and was really composed. I want to see him fight like that against Cormier. But I just think Cormier is getting up there in age, took so much damage in that Gustafsson fight that I just think he had to have lose a few steps athletically and just in his spirit. So I'm going with Rumble to land that knockout shot. Cormier could easily take him down, grind him, and open him up for that submission, but Johnson just has that momentum. He's young, and Cormier's really getting up there, and really looks like he's been slowing down lately. So I'm taking Rumble for the knockout, and I'm going to say round 2. All right, guys, those are my predictions for UFC 210. Cormier versus Johnson 2. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description at MMA Breakdown 0. And hopefully there will be a link in the description for the following event as well. UFC on Fox, I believe 24, Johnson versus Heiss. Sorry guys, I forgot to give you my most confident picks. I only feel really confident, and I'd say that means about 75% confident in 2 fights on this card, and that's Miles Jury and Kamaru Usman. Those would be my most confident picks. And then the rest of the card, I think most of the fights, as I hopefully got across in my predictions, are toss-ups. So if you forced me to pick 3 other fighters to give you my top 5 most confident picks, I would go with Burgos, Gillespie, and Josh Emmett. Alright guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.